The lecture hall was quiet. 300 young cadets sat in perfect rows, their different shapes and colors making the room look like a garden of alien flowers. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had skin that changed color with their mood. They came from 12 different species, all part of the great galactic concord that had kept peace among the stars for 800 years. Professor Mirith stood at the center of the room. She was Velith, tall and thin, with silver skin and 4 arms that she used to gesture as she spoke. Today's lesson was one of her favorites. "Let me tell you about a myth," she said, her voice carrying easily through the hall. "A story that ancient species told their children to scare them. A legend so strange that no educated being believes it anymore." She pressed a button, and a blue planet appeared in the air above her. It was beautiful but wrong somehow. The world was covered in water, with patches of green and brown land. Huge white storms swirled across its surface. "They called it Earth," Professor Mirith continued, "and they called its people humans." Some of the cadets laughed. They had heard this story before, the fairy tale of the impossible species from the impossible world. "The old records say that Earth was a death world," the professor said. "A planet that tried to kill everything living on it. The ground would shake and split open. Mountains would explode with liquid fire. The weather would freeze creatures solid or cook them alive. Diseases filled the air. Predators hunted in every corner." She paused for effect. "And somehow, the legends say, humans not only survived there, they thrived. They became the top predator on a world full of predators. They did this without claws, without armor, without venom. They did it with their minds and their refusal to die." A young cadet raised his hand. His scales were bright green, marking him as Kethrani. "Professor, why would anyone make up such a strange story?" Professor Mirith smiled. "Excellent question. The answer is simple. Every culture needs monsters in their stories. Humans were the perfect monsters. The old tales say they waged war against each other constantly, not for resources or territory, but for ideas. They split the atom and used it to burn cities. They walked into battle themselves, in person, looking their enemies in the eye as they killed them." The cadets shifted uncomfortably. The Concord had not known real war for centuries. Their conflicts were handled by drones and automated systems. The idea of walking into battle yourself was barbaric. "Most historians believe humans never existed at all," the professor finished. "They are simply a story, a way to explain the strange ruins we sometimes find in the outer rim." Class dismissed. The cadets filed out, talking and laughing about the silly legend of the Death World warriors. None of them knew that in 3 days, their entire understanding of the universe would shatter. The Dominion of Kethra attacked without warning. They came through a collapsed warp corridor that everyone had thought was useless. Their ships numbered in the thousands, black vessels covered in religious symbols, carrying millions of warriors who believed that killing was holy. The Kethra did not want peace or territory. They wanted blood. Their gods demanded it. The first Concord world to fall was Valithos 7. The Kethra fleet appeared in orbit and began landing troops before anyone could respond. The Concord's defense drones fought bravely, but they were machines. They followed programs and patterns. The Kethra warriors were chaos itself, screaming prayers as they charged through plasma fire. Valithos 7 fell in 6 hours. 12 million dead. Then Valithos 8. Then the colony moons of the Rithani system. The Kethra moved like fire through dry grass, and the Concord's elegant, civilized military crumbled before them. Professor Mirith watched the news reports from her office, her silver skin pale with fear. 3 of her former students had been stationed on Valithos 8. They were gone now, names on a growing list of the dead. The Concord Council met in emergency session. They sent diplomats to beg for peace. The Kethra ate the diplomats alive and broadcast the video across all channels. Desperate, the Council made a decision. They would send scout ships into the Forbidden Zones, the quarantine sectors of the Outer Rim, where ancient warnings told travelers to stay away. Perhaps there was something there, some weapon or ally that could save them. Captain Yenthi of the scout vessel Bright Wing drew the shortest lot. Her mission was simple: enter the most forbidden zone of all, a sector marked on old maps with a single word that had no translation. She was to look for anything that might help and try not to die. The journey took 2 weeks. The Bright Wing's crew grew more nervous with each passing day. The space here felt wrong. They passed structures that should not exist, a ring around a dead star, clearly artificial, larger than most planets. A field of debris that had once been something vast and terrible. And everywhere, old warnings in languages their computers could barely translate. Then they reached a yellow star with 8 planets, and their sensors screamed, weapons. Thousands of weapons platforms surrounded the 3rd planet from the star. Ancient designs, covered in dust and ice, but still active. Still watching. The Bright Wing's shields flared as scanning beams washed over them. Captain Yenthi prepared to die. Instead, a voice spoke. It came through their communication systems in a language that their computer identified from the oldest archives, a language that should not exist anymore. Unidentified vessel. State your intent. You have entered Sol System's sovereign space. Captain Yenthi's 4 hearts stopped beating for a moment. Sol, the star from the old myths. The home of the legend. This is Captain Yenthi of the Galactic Concord vessel Brightwing, she managed to say. We come in peace. We come begging for help. Our people are dying. We have nowhere else to turn. There was a long silence. Then the voice spoke again, different, somehow warmer, almost sad. We know. We've been watching. Hold your position, Captain. Someone will come to meet you. The crew of the Bright Wing waited in terrified silence. And as they waited, they looked at the blue planet on their screens, a world of water and storms and impossible life. The myths were wrong. Captain Yenthi realized. Humanity had not died out. They had not faded into legend. They had simply stopped answering the door. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, someone was knocking. Captain Yenthi had expected many things. She had expected primitives living in the ruins of ancient glory. She had expected savages who had forgotten the stars. She had expected, perhaps, to find nothing at all, just automated systems, running long after their masters had turned to dust. She had not expected the ship that emerged from behind Earth's moon. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. The vessel was larger than anything the Concorde had ever built, but it moved with the grace of a living thing. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to drink in starlight, and strange symbols glowed along its sides. As it approached the Brightwing, Captain Yenthi felt like a small fish watching a whale rise from the deep. Concorde vessel Brightwing, the communication system announced. Please follow us. The ambassador will meet you on Luna Station. Luna Station was built into Earth's moon. The facility was vast, a city of metal and glass carved into ancient rock. Through the windows, Yenthi could see Earth hanging in the black sky, and she could not look away. The planet was more beautiful than any world she had ever seen. Lights glittered on its night side, showing cities that stretched across continents. Orbital rings circled the world like jewelry, and thousands of ships moved between them in perfect order. The humans had not fallen. They had grown. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka was waiting in the meeting chamber. She was small by human standards, with black hair turning gray at the edges and eyes that held a deep kindness. She smiled as Captain Yenthi's delegation entered, and she greeted each of them by species in their own languages. Please, sit, she said. gesturing to chairs that had been shaped to fit each alien body type. You have come a long way, and I know you are afraid. Let us talk. Captain Yenthi's translator struggled to keep up. You speak our languages. All of them. How is this possible? Ambassador Tanaka's smile turned sad. We have been listening for a very long time, Captain. 12,000 years. We heard your people develop warp travel. We heard your first radio broadcasts, your music, your debates. We watched your civilizations grow and stumble and grow again. Then why did you hide? Another delegate demanded. He was Velith, like Professor Mirith, and his silver skin was flushed dark with emotion. Why did you let us think you were myth? Why did you abandon the galaxy? The ambassador was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. We did not hide out of cruelty, she said. We hid out of shame. 12,000 years ago, humanity was young and foolish and powerful. We thought we knew what was best for everyone. We interfered with species who were not ready for us. We gave technology to civilizations that destroyed themselves with it. We fought wars to protect people who did not want our protection. We called it helping. It was not. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth. The last interference war killed billions, she continued. Not humans, others. Species we were trying to save. We were so focused on being heroes that we became monsters. After that, we made a choice. We would withdraw. We would let younger species grow without our shadow over them. We would watch and wait and hope that someday we could return as equals instead of conquerors. Captain Yenthi understood. The guilt in the ambassador's voice was the guilt of a parent who had hurt their children while trying to help them. And now? She asked, will you help us now? The Kethra are killing millions. 3 species face extinction. We cannot stop them alone. Ambassador Tanaka turned back to face them. That decision is not mine to make. Humanity is not a kingdom with a single ruler. We are many peoples with many voices. The coalition will vote. The vote took 3 days. 3 days while the Kethra burned another world. 3 days while the Concord delegation waited in comfortable rooms on Luna Station, watching news reports of the slaughter. Humanity was divided. The isolationist councils argued loudly that the galaxy had forgotten them, turned them into fairy tales, laughed at the idea of their existence. Why should human soldiers die for people who thought they were monsters from children's stories? The interventionist factions pushed back just as hard. The Kethra would not stop with the Concord, they said. And more than that, standing by while civilizations burned was not who humanity was supposed to be anymore. They had spent 12,000 years trying to become better. Now was the time to prove they had succeeded. During the wait, Captain Yenthi was given a tour of human military facilities. She had expected to be impressed. She was not prepared to be terrified. Human soldiers trained in conditions that would kill any Concord species. They ran through fire. They fought in rooms with no air. They practiced combat while poison gas filled their lungs, while electricity shocked their muscles, while machines broke their bones, and they kept fighting. Why? Yenthi asked her guide, a young human soldier named Thomas. Why do you do this to yourselves? You have drones. You have automated weapons. Why do you still fight in person? Thomas thought about the question seriously before answering. Because some things require a person, he said. A drone can pull a trigger. It cannot decide to show mercy. It cannot look at a surrendering enemy and choose to let them live. It cannot hold a dying child and promise them it will be okay. He shrugged. We fight in person because war is too important to leave to machines. On the 3rd day, the vote was counted. The result was closer than anyone had hoped. But the decision was made, Admiral Marcus Chun addressed the Concord delegation in a room filled with human military leaders. He was an old man with a face like weathered stone and eyes that had seen too much death. "We spent 12,000 years becoming better than we were," he said. "Better than the conquerors and the meddlers and the fools who thought power made them right. We learned patience. We learned humility. We learned that true strength is not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice of when to use that ability." He paused. "The coalition has voted. We will fight beside you. Not as your saviors, we are not gods, whatever the old stories say. We will fight as your allies, as your friends." His voice hardened. "The Kethra have chosen to wage war on the innocent. They will learn what that means." Captain Yenthi felt tears running down her face. She had come looking for a legend and found something better people. Strange, frightening, beautiful people who had chosen to help. Across human space, shipyards that had been silent for millennia began to wake. The forges of Mars, cold for 12,000 years, roared back to life. Billions of humans watched the news and volunteered for service. Ambassador Tanaka stood beside Admiral Chun, her face calm but her eyes bright. "The door has been closed for a long time," she said quietly. "It is time to open it again." The legend was about to walk back onto the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same. The sky above Velithos 9 was burning. Lieutenant Kethmarie pressed herself against the rubble that had once been a school. Around her, 2 million refugees huddled behind failing shield generators, waiting to die. The Kethra fleet hung in orbit like a crown of black thorns, and their landing ships were already descending through the clouds. She was 23 years old, Lilith, and she had been a soldier for exactly 6 months. Her training had covered tactics, weapons, and proper forms of address. It had not covered watching civilians scream as plasma fire fell from the sky. It had not covered the smell of burning flesh or the sound of children crying for parents who would never answer. The planetary shield flickered. In minutes, maybe less, it would fall completely. The Kethra would pour through, and everyone on this world would die. Lieutenant Kethmarie checked her weapon. It was almost out of charge. She had 17 shots left. There were thousands of Kethra warriors coming. "All defenders," her radio crackled. "Prepare for final stand. It has been an honor serving with you." She closed her eyes and thought of home, of her mother's cooking, of the way sunlight looked through silver leaves. She would never see any of it again. Then the sky changed. It started as a ripple, like the surface of water when you drop a stone. Then the ripples became tears, hundreds of them, ripping open the fabric of space itself. Through those tears came ships, dark ships with glowing symbols. Ships that moved like predators, fast and silent and hungry. "What?" someone gasped on the radio. The lead ship broadcast on all channels. The voice was calm and clear and utterly without fear. "Kethra vessels. This is Admiral Marcus Chun of the Human Expeditionary Force. You have committed acts of genocide against sentient beings. You will withdraw or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply." Lieutenant Kethmarie's heart stopped. Human. The word from the old myths. The legend. She looked up at the ships filling the sky and felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. The Kethra Supreme Prelate responded with laughter. "Humans? The ghost story? You dare to threaten the Dominion with fairy tales?" His voice dripped with contempt. "We have conquered 100 worlds. We have ground species into dust. What can legends do against us?" Admiral Chun's response was not words. It was action. The human dreadnought Unconquerable moved forward. It was enormous, larger than any Kethra vessel, but it accelerated like a fighter craft. The Kethra flagship opened fire plasma missiles, energy beams, all of it splashing against shields that simply refused to break. Then the Unconquerable did something impossible. It did not stop. It did not slow down. It rammed directly through the Kethra flagship shields, tearing them apart like paper, and buried itself in the enemy ship's hull. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the airlocks opened, and the humans came out. Lieutenant Kethmari watched on her tactical display as thousands of armored figures poured from the Unconquerable into the Kethra flagship. They moved in perfect coordination, clearing corridors, securing junctions, advancing, always advancing. The Kethra warriors, who had never faced an enemy willing to meet them hand-to-hand, found themselves fighting something they did not understand. The humans did not stop when they were shot. They did not break when their friends fell. They did not run when outnumbered. They just kept coming, relentless and unstoppable, like a tide that could not be turned back. Within an hour, the Kethra flagship was silent. The Supreme Prelate's final transmission was a single word, repeated over and over: impossible, impossible, impossible. On the surface of Valian's 9, the real battle was just beginning. The Kethra had already landed thousands of warriors. They advanced through the ruined streets, killing everything in their path, screaming prayers to their blood-hungry gods. The planetary defenders fell back, trying to protect the refugee camps, knowing they could not hold. Then the drop pods came. They fell from the sky like meteors, screaming through the atmosphere, slamming into the ground hard enough to shake the earth. The pods burst open, and the humans stepped out already firing. Lieutenant Kethmari saw her first human up close when one landed 30 meters from her position. The armor was terrifying black metal etched with symbols, a helmet with a single glowing eye slit, weapons built into every surface. The human was huge, taller than any Velith, and it moved with a speed that seemed wrong for something so large. A squad of Kethra warriors charged the human, blades raised, prayers on their lips. The human raised its weapon and fired, not wildly, not in panic, but with cold precision. 3 Kethra fell. The 4th reached the human and drove its blade into a gap in the armor. The human looked down at the blade in its side. Then it grabbed the Kethra warrior by the throat, lifted it off the ground, and threw it through a wall. "Hostiles eliminated," the human said, its voice flat through the helmet speakers. "Moving to protect refugee column. Any local defenders, fall in behind me." Lieutenant Kethmari found herself running to catch up, a dying weapon clutched in her trembling hands. Other Velith soldiers joined her, their eyes wide with shock. They had read about humans in academy textbooks, laughed at the silly legends. Now they were following one into battle. The human led them through streets filled with fire and death. Kethra warriors appeared from every direction, and the human killed them all. Not easily, the enemy landed hits, drew blood, but the human never stopped, never slowed, never showed fear. At one point, a plasma bolt came screaming toward Lieutenant Kethmari. She saw it coming and knew she could not dodge in time. Then the human was there, stepping in front of her, taking the blast on its armored chest. The impact knocked the human back 3 steps. Smoke rose from scorched metal. "Are you injured?" the human asked. "No," Kethmari managed. "Good." The human raised its weapon. "Stay behind me." They reached the refugee camp as the sun was setting. Thousands of civilians cowered behind makeshift barriers, guarded by the last handful of defenders. The humans were everywhere now, setting up heavy weapons, treating wounded, carrying children to safety. The Kethra assault had been broken, their warriors scattered and destroyed. Lieutenant Kethmari sat down heavily, her legs shaking. The human who had saved her life removed its helmet, revealing a face beneath. A woman's face, scarred and tired, with eyes that had seen too much but were still somehow kind. "You fought well," the woman said. "What's your name?" Kethmari. Lieutenant Kethmari. The woman smiled. I'm Sergeant Rivara. You're going to be okay, Lieutenant. We're here now. A small Velith child approached them, clutching a torn piece of fabric that might have once been a toy. The child looked at Sergeant Rivera with huge, frightened eyes. Are you really human? The child asked. From the stories? The ones who came from the world that tried to kill them? Sergeant Rivera knelt down to meet the child's eyes. Her smile was gentle, nothing like the killing machine she had been moments before. Every world tries to kill what lives on it, she said. Yours did too, a long time ago. We all come from worlds that wanted us dead. She reached out and touched the child's cheek softly. That's why we have to take care of each other. Because survival means nothing if you do it alone. Lieutenant Kethmari watched this moment and understood something. The legends had been wrong about humans. They had described monsters, demons, killing machines without mercy. But the legends had missed the truth. Humans were not monsters. They were something far more complicated. They could kill without hesitation and show kindness without limit. They could walk through fire and then stop to comfort a crying child. They were every contradiction at once: violence and mercy, strength and tenderness, fury and love. In orbit, the Kethra fleet was in ruins. On the ground, their warriors were dead or fleeing. The Battle of Velithos 9 was over. But the war was just beginning. And humanity had announced its return to the galaxy in a way that no one would ever forget. The legend was walking. And the legend was angry. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velithos 9. 6 months of war, of blood, of fire spreading across the stars. And for humanity, 6 months of learning that being a legend carried a terrible weight. Admiral Marcus Chun stood in the memorial garden on Luna Station, surrounded by names. So many names. Human soldiers who had died fighting someone else's war. He read each one slowly, committing them to memory because someone had to remember. The galaxy called humans heroes now. Saviors. Gods walking among mortals. Cults had formed on a dozen worlds, worshipping humanity as divine beings sent to deliver the Concord from evil. Temples were built. Prayers were spoken. And human soldiers came home to find statues of themselves standing in alien city squares. It was wrong. All of it was wrong. We are not your legends, Chun had said in his address to the Concord Assembly. We are not gods. We are not saviors. We are people who bleed and die and grieve just like you. Some of our soldiers are not coming home. They left families behind. Children who will grow up without parents. Remember that about us. Remember that we are mortal, and our mortality is the price we pay for standing beside you. The words had helped a little, but the worship continued. Humans could not walk through Concord stations without crowds gathering, without hands reaching out to touch them, without whispered prayers following in their wake. Sergeant Rivara, who had become a symbol of human compassion after the images of her comforting the Velith child spread across the galaxy, had requested a transfer to frontline duty. I cannot be what they want me to be, she told her commander. I am just a soldier. Let me do my job. Meanwhile, the Kethra were losing. Human forces pushed deeper into Dominion space every week, liberating conquered worlds, freeing prisoners, dismantling the military infrastructure that had made the Kethra so deadly. For the first time in their empire's history, the Dominion tasted defeat, and they did not know how to handle it. The human colony world of New Harmony was a small place. 30 million people living on a green moon orbiting a gas giant, far from the front lines. They had farms and schools and hospitals. They had children playing in parks and elders telling stories in the evening light. They had no military value at all. The Kethra destroyed them anyway. The silence weapon was ancient technology, forbidden by laws older than the Concord itself. It did not kill quickly or cleanly. It erased. Every living cell, every microbe, every blade of grass simply stopped existing. New Harmony went from a living world to a dead rock in the span of a single heartbeat. 30 million humans, gone. Not dead gone. No bodies to bury. No ashes to scatter. Just absence where life had been. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do. Some expected madness. The Deathworld warriors finally unleashed, burning the Kethra homeworld from orbit, salting the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. Revenge without mercy. Blood for blood. Others expected collapse. How could any species recover from such horror? Surely the humans would retreat, curl inward, abandon the war to grieve. Neither prediction came true. Humanity mourned. They mourned publicly, without shame, without hiding their tears. Memorial services were held across human space. The names of the dead were read aloud, all 30 million of them, in ceremonies that lasted for days. Families gathered. Communities supported each other. Songs were sung. Stories were told. And when the mourning was done, Admiral Chan addressed the galaxy again. His face was tired and lined with grief, but his voice was steady. The Kethra believe they have taught us to fear them, he said. They believe that by killing our innocent, they have broken our will. They are wrong. He paused. We have a choice now. We can become what they expect us to be: monsters, destroyers, bringers of extinction. We have the power to end the Kethra as a species. Every man, woman, and child. We could burn their worlds until nothing remains but ash and memory. His voice hardened. We will not. We refuse to become what we fight. The Kethra want us to abandon our principles, to prove that we are the demons their religions claim. We will not give them that satisfaction. He looked directly into the camera, and everyone watching felt as though he was speaking to them alone. Instead, we will do something harder. We will dismantle their ability to make war. We will destroy their weapons, their ships, their military infrastructure. We will take their fangs and leave them helpless. And then we will show them mercy. Because mercy is not weakness. Mercy is the strength to choose a better path when every instinct screams for blood. The human offensive began 3 days later. It was relentless, overwhelming, and precise. Human forces did not bomb civilian centers. They did not massacre prisoners. They fought their way to military targets and destroyed them, then moved on, leaving the Kethra population untouched. The Kethra did not understand. In their culture, war meant total destruction. An enemy who could destroy you, but chose not to, was incomprehensible. Some warriors threw down their weapons in confusion. Others fought harder, desperate to provoke the humans into the genocide they expected. The human did not give them what they wanted. Lieutenant Keth Mari promoted to captain now. After her actions on Velithos 9 fought alongside human forces in the assault on Keth Prime itself. She watched human marines advance through streets filled with hostile civilians, taking hits, taking casualties, and still refusing to fire on anyone who was not actively trying to kill them. Why? She asked Sergeant Rivara, who had requested transfer to the assault force. They killed 30 million of your people. Why do you show them mercy? Rivera was quiet for a long moment. A cut on her forehead was bleeding, and her armor was scorched from a close call with a plasma grenade. Because someone has to be the first to stop, she finally said. Hatred is a fire, Captain. If everyone keeps adding fuel, it burns forever. Someone has to choose to let it die. She looked at the Kethra civilians watching from windows, their faces full of fear and confusion. Maybe they will hate us forever. Maybe their children will hate us too. But maybe, just maybe, their grandchildren will ask why we did not destroy them when we could have. And maybe the answer will plant a seed. The Supreme Prelate was captured alive. He was brought before Admiral Chun in chains, still defiant, still spitting curses. "Kill me," he demanded. "Burn my world. Prove you are the monsters we know you to be." Admiral Chun looked at him for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "No, no." The prelate laughed bitterly. "You destroyed our fleets. You broke our armies. You hold our homeworld. And you say no? You wanted us to be monsters," Chun said. "You wanted us to give you a reason to hate us forever. I will not give you that gift." He leaned forward. "You will live, prelate. You will watch your people rebuild. You will see your children grow up in a galaxy that no longer fears you. And every day, you will have to live with the knowledge that the humans you tried to destroy chose mercy when they did not have to." He stood. "That is your punishment. Not death, life. A long life, watching everything you believe proven wrong." The war was ending. But the hardest work was about to begin, because killing enemies is easy. Teaching them to become friends, that is the real battle. And humanity had always been stubborn about the impossible. 5 years had passed since the guns fell silent. 5 years since the Kethra Dominion collapsed and the galaxy began the long work of healing. And on a bright morning on Earth, the old professor finally finished her book. Mirth, no longer professor, retired now from the academy that had once been her whole world, sat in her garden on a human colony world and read her final chapter one more time. Her silver skin had faded to gray with age, and her 4 hands trembled slightly as she held the manuscript. But her mind was still sharp, and the words on the page were exactly what she wanted them to say. She had come to Earth 3 years ago, part of the first cultural exchange program between the Concord and humanity. She had expected to stay for a few months. Instead, she had stayed forever, because the story she needed to tell could only be told from here, among the people she had once dismissed as myths. Her new lecture opened differently than the old one. "I once taught my students that humanity was a legend, a story too extraordinary to be real. I was wrong, but not in the way I thought. The legends understated them, not because humans are superhuman, but because they are deeply, stubbornly, beautifully human. They carry their flaws openly. They fail and try again. They choose mercy when vengeance would be easier. They grieve without shame and love without limit. That is what makes them extraordinary, not their strength, their heart." She set down the manuscript as her human neighbor called to her over the garden fence. Thomas, the same young soldier who had once explained to Captain Yenthi why humans fought in person, was bringing her fresh vegetables from his garden. He had lost an arm in the Battle of Keth Prime and walked with a limp now, but his smile was unchanged. "Morning, Professor," he said, using the title she had kept even in retirement. "Got some tomatoes for you. Best batch yet." "Thank you, Thomas." She took the basket with 2 of her hands. "How is your daughter?" "Growing fast. She wants to meet you. Keeps asking about the 4-armed lady who tells stories about the war." Mirith smiled. "Bring her by this afternoon. I have some new stories for her." Across the galaxy, the work of rebuilding continued. Human engineers worked alongside Concord scientists to restore the worlds the Kethra had devastated. Human teachers opened schools on former Dominion planets, teaching children whose parents had been raised to hate them. Human doctors treated patients who still flinched at the sight of a human face. It was slow work, painful work. There were setbacks, old hatreds flaring up, violence breaking out, progress undone by fear and anger. But it continued, year after year, because humans were stubborn about impossible things. The former Supreme Prelate died in his sleep 4 years after his capture. He had never spoken publicly about his defeat, never admitted that his gods had been wrong. But his private journals, released after his death, told a different story. He has spent his final years watching humans rebuild his shattered world. He had seen enemy soldiers share their food with starving Kethra children. He had watched human medics treat wounded warriors who had killed their friends. And slowly, painfully, his certainty had cracked. His final entry reads simply, "I understand now why they chose mercy. It was not weakness. It was the only true victory. I wish I had seen it sooner." On the 5th anniversary of the war's end, a new memorial was dedicated on Earth. It stood in the center of a great plaza, and its surface was covered with names, human and alien alike, everyone who had died in the conflict. Kethra names were there too, the warriors who had fallen fighting against humanity. Because the dead, the memorial's designers believed, deserved to be remembered regardless of which side they had fought on. Admiral Chun, retired now and gray-haired, visited the memorial with his grandchildren. They were young, born after the war, and they asked him questions about the names. "Were these people heroes, Grandpa?" Chun considered the question carefully. "Some of them," he said. "Some of them were scared. Some were angry. Some did not want to fight at all. They were people, just people doing their best in terrible times." A shadow fell over them. Chun looked up to see a Kethra veteran approaching, tall, scarred, wearing the traditional marks of a warrior who had earned honor in battle. Chun recognized him. They had faced each other across the battlefield of Keth Prime. The Kethra stopped a few meters away. For a long moment, neither spoke. "I fought against you," the Kethra finally said. His voice was rough, his Concord standard heavily accented. "At Keth Prime, I tried to kill you. You let me live." Chun nodded slowly. "I remember. I did not understand why. For years, I did not understand." The warrior's jaw tightened. "I teach my children now. I teach them what you taught me. That mercy is not weakness. That enemies can become," he struggled with the word, "friends." He reached into his robe and pulled out something small. A carved figure, rough but recognizable, a human soldier, rendered in Kethra style. "My daughter made this. She wanted you to have it. She says you are." Again the pause. "You are what warriors should be. Not killers, protectors." Chun took the figure. His eyes were bright with tears. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Tell your daughter it is the greatest honor I have ever received." The Kethra nodded once, sharply, and walked away. Chun watched him go, the small carved figure warm in his hand. A year later, a new class of Concord cadets visited Earth on cultural exchange. Young beings from a dozen species walked through human cities, ate human food, learned human songs. On their last day, a young Velith student, a distant relative of the retired professor, asked their human guide a question. "What does it feel like to be a legend?" The guide laughed. She was a middle-aged woman with laugh lines around her eyes and dirt under her fingernails from gardening. Nothing about her seemed legendary at all. "Legends do not do dishes," she said. "Legends do not argue with their partners about what show to watch. Legends do not wake up with sore backs or burn their breakfast or get stuck in traffic." She shrugged. "We are just people who decided to show up when it mattered. That is something anyone can do. Even you." The young Velith thought about this. Around them, the human city hummed with ordinary life, people going to work, children playing, couples arguing, old ones sitting in the sun. Nothing mythical, nothing divine. Just life, messy and beautiful and real. "I think I understand," the student said slowly. "The legends were never really about you, were they? They were about what we hoped we could be. What we hoped anyone could be." The guide smiled. "Maybe so. And maybe the best thing about legends is that they show us we do not have to wait for heroes. We can be them ourselves, in small ways, every day. Above them, Ships moved through the sky, human and Concorde, and even a few Kethra vessels, traveling together, sharing the stars. 12,000 years ago, humanity had closed its door to the galaxy. Now that door stood open, and through it flowed not conquest but connection. The galaxy had labeled humanity a legend, a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered in the dark. They had been wrong. Legends do not bleed. Legends do not weep over their dead. Legends do not choose mercy when destruction would be easier. Humans did all of these things. And in doing so, they taught the galaxy something more valuable than any technology or weapon. They taught them that the greatest power in the universe is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to choose not to extend a hand instead of a fist, to build instead of burn, to remember that every enemy was once a child, and every monster was made, not born. The legend was over. The story continued. And it was being written by everyone, now human and alien alike, together, one day at a time. Because that is what legends leave behind. Not worship, not temples, not fear, hope, and the stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better than today.